Hello, everyone out there. It's good to see you again. I'm LeeAnn Mallorie, founder of Guts and Grace Leadership, and I am here for another conversation about integrity with you. If you are out there on any of our channels, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, give me a shout here in the chat just so that I know that you are with us and you're able to hear me. Welcoming whoever may be watching now or later. All right, it looks like we are live on LinkedIn. Thank you for the heads up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully, a few folks will join us over time or watch us later. As I said already, if you don't know me yet, I'm LeeAnn Mallorie. I'm the founder of Guts and Grace Leadership, where we help women leaders tap into the wisdom of their bodies and their intuitions so they can become more resilient and recognized industry leaders. I really focus in my work on the intersection between the body and leadership. And we use practices from mindfulness, positive psychology, neuroscience to help our clients become more alive, more focused, more present in the work that they do. Last week, we actually started a conversation about a particular topic in the realm of, we could say, leadership values, which is the topic of integrity. And given some of the response that we had, I wanted to go another layer deeper here online before opening a new topic down the road. So if you are here this week, I hope that it's because you are interested in this topic of integrity. Perhaps you're on your own journey of exploring integrity for yourself. Maybe you feel like you have high integrity, so you want to know what someone's going to say about this particular topic online. Or maybe, like some of my clients and myself, you find it to be actually a bit of a complex topic or a challenging topic in different ways, although on the surface, it sounds like a good idea. Perhaps you have a sense that you're actually recalibrating from your own integrity right now as things continue to change around you in the world and in the workplace. If any of that is true, you are in the right place. I want to invite you as we dive in today to go ahead and take a moment to really get in learning mode. So if you have a journal, a notebook, a Word document, something that you like to keep notes on, please grab that so that you can capture your learning. And if you have things on like notifications or your email is open, I highly recommend that you take a few minutes to minimize distractions and really come into presence so that we can be not only kind of a voice in the background, but really in learning mode here together, even though we are just live online. And in service of that, since a good deal of what I do is embodied leadership, I also want to invite you to take a moment for presence. So feel free at this moment, if you would like to, take a couple of deeper breaths to let your heart rate perhaps and your mind slow down just a little bit and bring your awareness to this moment. One of the fastest ways to do that is bring your awareness to the sensations in your body. Can you feel yourself? If you can, you're more here than you were when you were thinking about something else. So feel your body. Might just be feel the weight of your behind on the chair, your feet on the ground. The inhaling and exhaling, expanding and contracting of your lungs as you breathe. All right, if your eyes were closed to do that, please go ahead and open them if you would like. And we're going to start on this theme of integrity. So first of all, an important value for us today as leaders in the workplace. Many of us are thinking about this, especially as we come into relationship with what we might call this newer movement of conscious leadership. How do I lead well, make an impact, lead in a way that actually is good for myself and good for others? Perhaps there are folks who are watching who really relate with that particular framing on leadership. Maybe you're in the business world, maybe you're in politics, maybe you're in a nonprofit context, that you're really wanting to lead in a way that actually is creating a field, let's say, around you of positive and good intentions. This construct of integrity is very much about walking our talk. And many of us are measuring how we see ourselves as leaders and how we see those around us using this value. But what is it really? I'm actually going to go ahead and share in the chat here a recent blog that I wrote on this topic in case you want to check it out on our Guts and Grace website. I'm going to touch on a few things from it here in this live and then go a little deeper in a different direction that's not in this blog. But you're welcome to track it, to follow us there. Last week when we were live, we defined at a high level integrity as one, you may see it in the dictionary, right? The quality of being honest, of having strong moral principles, like a certain kind of moral uprightness. But also this other definition that is a bit more abstract, and I think in some ways a little more useful, simply the state of being whole and undivided in ourselves or anything could have integrity. So, this idea of being whole and undivided as a leader, being whole and undivided as a human being or as a self, being a reflection of your integrity. Since we're co creating here, I want to invite you to take a moment for yourself, if you are listening or watching later, and just write down a few words. What does integrity mean to you? How do you see it? How would you define it? Maybe even why is it important? If you're here live and you want to put something in the chat, please go ahead and do that. But also, I always recommend like capturing your own notes. The chat may be gone later, but your own notes will continue. So, what is integrity to you? How do you define it? How do you see it? What does it mean to you? Sometimes folks will simply say living in accordance with my own values, or again, walking my talk. Last time we were here live together, and in the blog you'll see, I outlined 3 different, we might say, types of integrity or kinds of integrity that can tend to get lost when we're operating under pressure, either at life and or in our work. These are also really 3 core aspects of integrity when we're talking about leadership or moving through our lives or moving through the workplace. So I'll give you just a quick taste of them here. And again, you can go deeper by coming back to them in our blog, for example. First of all, simply I say what I do. Or we could use this expression, my word is my bond. Meaning, if I say I'll be here at a certain time, do I show up? If I commit to delivering something to my boss or a team member or someone that I'm collaborating with, do I actually produce that thing? Or if I don't, for example, do I do the work to renegotiate? Do I actually change the contract so that I can then fulfill on the thing that I have promised? Many of us work hard to fulfill on certain things, maybe in one context, but perhaps there are other contexts where we are less likely to keep our word. Maybe I'm really good at keeping my word at home, but I don't always do it at work, or vice versa, for example. I'm going to come back to a little later in this conversation trade offs and tensions between who we're being and keeping our word. But just, first and foremost, one kind of integrity is simply do I do what I say I'm going to do, or do I keep my word with others? Another aspect of integrity, so number 2, being true to myself. Whereas the first aspect is about between myself and other, am I following through? Am I keeping my word? There may also be ways that I'm out of integrity with myself. Am I being honest with myself about how I really feel or who I really am as a person in my workplace, as a leader, in my marriage, in my community? Or am I making compromises that actually pull me in some way further and further from who I really am? Am I perhaps taking actions that fog me from really knowing myself, or engaged in habits or behaviors that kind of hide who I am from myself, or in some way that I'm being a certain version or only a piece of myself with the rest of the world that over time degrades my relationship with me? So this could be, again, connected to who I am with others, but it's much more about losing myself, losing who I really am, losing my capacity to really be on track with myself in relationship with myself. When this happens, which is actually very common in small ways, right? Maybe many of us are mostly integrity and true to ourselves, but in some small ways, little white lies, ways that we kind of miss ourselves, we're still not quite fully aligned. When it does happen, it can start to make it more and more difficult to be fully in integrity with others as well. And it can also make it more difficult to actually get our needs met. So the more I don't know myself, the more I'm being someone other than me, the more out of integrity I am with who I actually am, what I actually need, what actually matters to me, or what's important to me, the harder it can be to really get met by the outside world. And often there's a certain level of sadness. Sometimes it's more like a depression. Sometimes it shows up more like a burnout when this is the way that I'm rolling through the world more often. The last kind of integrity that I would name is what I call coherency of body, mind, and spirit. And this is really more like integrity between the parts of my own embodiment or parts of myself, so that my presence may come across as not so integrous. For example, maybe I tend to smile when I'm sad, or I please others when I'm actually really upset and enraged. Maybe I move through the world in a very rigid way physically, but actually my spirit is quite light, and I'm quite free in a lot of ways. So there's some misalignment or difference between one part of myself and another part of myself, which doesn't mean I'm necessarily not being myself, but that these parts are not talking to each other or aren't fully coherent with one another. This can happen as a result of trauma. It can happen in a way as a function of keeping ourselves safe in difficult situations, or a strategy to cope with different kinds of environments around us. But it becomes a fragmentation in who we're being. And again, not uncommon. It might sound like a bad thing, but I'm offering these in a way of, in fact, pretty common everyday types of lack of or out of integrities that we can be, which can then open the door to a possibility of doing some healing, doing some recalibrating, doing some exploration, even just doing some reflection. What's happening here? Why is this so? And what's the next step that I could take? So, the last time that we were together, and I believe also in the blog, I offer some reflection questions, things to think about, for example, if I might want to come back into harmony. So, at this moment, since we're here together now, I invite you just to take a minute or two to take stock for yourself. Do any of these three kind of resonate? Yes, I can see myself in that, or maybe all three in different ways. What are the ways perhaps that I might see a certain lack of integrity or out of alignment in myself that are worth noting, especially if you can do it with kindness toward yourself, right? It's not so helpful to also beat ourselves up for these things, but it is helpful to note them. So if you have a journal and you're taking notes right now, just take a note, write a few examples. Here's what I see for me. Here's how I see this might be so for me, or that one of the three might be so for me. Again, the first being my word is my bond. I do what I say I'm going to do in relation with others. The second, I'm true to myself in kind of a holistic way. And then the third, I'm coherent or not in my own body, mind, and spirit. Aspects of me are in integrity with each other. Okay, so whatever you have noted or written down, maybe nothing. That's fine. We're just exploring here together. I want to also invite you to consider, where are you doing well when it comes to integrity right now? Maybe you've recently made a move to speak a truth to someone, or to clean up a ball that you dropped, or maybe you've recently seen a way that you're actually out of integrity with yourself and you've changed something or taken a different action. So, if that is so, I also invite you to take a moment to give yourself credit for that change, or just that thing that you've been doing all along that actually you're quite good at, or that you really own when it comes to integrity. Because as we also give ourselves credit, we're able to use and leverage that credit we're giving ourselves to expand and double down on that way we're being that is working. Okay, and then lastly, for this moment, I want to invite you to reflect on someone else that you know who you feel embodies integrity in a way that you might not yet, or maybe you do, but they do it more brilliantly or more fully in a way that you really admire. So if you have someone like that in mind, take a minute and write down their name, and then write down one thing you appreciate or admire about them that might be, a good kind of thing to aspire to for you. Okay. With all of this as a background, I want to transition into a topic that is more the kind of deepening theme for our session today. And essentially, what this theme is that sometimes two things are true, sometimes more than two. But let's just say sometimes two things are true. So, what does it mean to have integrity? How do we be in our full integrity or really aspire to integrity when it's not always clear cut? Am I being myself or not? Because this seems true, but this also seems true. Do I have to choose between them to have integrity? Do I have to double down on one and let the other go to be fully in integration with myself? What if I can't actually tell? What if I'm not sure which one is really me and which isn't me? Or what if I'm not really sure if the right move that is the move in the most integrity is to do X or to do Y? Or what if there are these parts of myself that seem to be running two different programs or operating in two different ways, but neither seems like the real answer or the right answer, or neither seems better than the other? Believe it or not, if you, well, let's say here, if you tend to be a person who is very interested in integrity and really think it's important, and you ask this from other people and really hold this kind of line with yourself and others, this might sound like crazy talk. How could it be that two things could be true? How could it be that I could be this and that? How could it be that I'm keeping my word and also breaking my word at the same time? How could that make any sense? So you might be listening and thinking, yeah, I don't understand. What does that mean? Integrity is integrity. We're true to ourselves or we're not. We're in integrity or we're not. You might also be listening and thinking, aha, okay, that actually illuminates something for me because in some way my experience hasn't quite been so cut and dry. In some way, I'm not totally sure if I am being true to myself or integrity or not. When does this happen? Well, you already know that part of our work at Guts and Grace is working with women in leadership. Often, over the course of a career where we're operating in a context that maybe wasn't totally built for us or built by us, we start to develop these strategies. We program ourselves or get programmed perhaps to think or to act in a certain way or just to show up for what's needed. And as we're experiencing this moving through the world, being influenced, being shaped by things, being perhaps consciously or unconsciously programmed, calibrated in certain ways, it actually can be easy to lose a sense of what's true or not true along the way, or even to develop more than one truth. This is true, and also in some way that is true as well. This feels like reality to me, and also in some way that feels like reality to me as well. This is especially hard to untangle if we're in the realm of actual or perceived or both discrimination. It can be challenging if we carry different cultural or ethnic or racial identities, that there's a yes and that may be so when it comes to our personal integrity. Many of our clients face this. Often we're in conversations that aren't just about keeping my word or that aren't just about, am I fully aligned with myself? Yes, it's a good question, but also, what do I do if I have these conflicting ways of being, conflicting needs, conflicting intentions, trade offs that I'm living inside of, complexities or contradictions? So, this is a territory that is connected to the theme of integrity. And often, I think if we just assess each other through a very simple lens of yes or no, I am or I'm not, we're missing some of the nuance of this very important conversation about integrity. Or we're kind of judging from a more simplified way versus giving credit where credit is due to the deep complexity of our own nervous systems and how we be and how we become to navigate the world. So I'll share a couple of examples here, and then I want to give you a chance to feel into this also for yourself. Working with clients at a retreat over this weekend, one of the topics that came up was this idea of, on one hand, let's say, I really am a bold human. I trust myself. I can make big moves. I'm a powerful leader. I'm a person who's making way, like doing good things and doing big things in the world. On the other hand, perhaps some part of me pulls back, gets shy, turns the volume down, doesn't want to make so many waves. Yeah. So, this experience of like both, and I can see that on one hand, I have a certain embodiment or quality in my own integrity of being a bold person. On the other hand, I also have a hesitancy to take risks or a place that I don't feel totally safe or want to fully open or reveal myself at work. Am I out of integrity if I'm being one or the other of those? And then a question starts to become, perhaps, is there a more integrated way to be able to hold them both so I don't feel like I'm being torn in two different directions, for example? Another kind of classic and not uncommon version of this type of a trade off would be something like, I'm excited about my career on one hand. I am committed to and I'm passionate about growing. I want to go far. I feel like there's a lot I can do in the industry. I'm really committed perhaps to growing in my role or growing the company. And on the other hand, for example, I want to start a family. And on the other hand, not just like in theory, I think those things would be in conflict, but I actually see, for example, that I might need to slow down, to operate in a different way, to be able to make space for and time for a child, to make space and time for a partner that might ask something more of me if we're really building together in this way. So, on one hand, amplifying, expanding, moving forward in my career. On the other hand, this other tension. Am I out of integrity if I move forward in my career if I also want this other thing? Am I out of integrity with my career if I decide to slow down and take a pause or change what I'm focusing on at work to be able to make space for this other need or desire? Probably not. And yet I might find that I'm making contradictory choices. I'm making choices I might actually feel in some way in conflict with myself or out of integrity or pulled in different directions. So I wanted to name this as an additional lens of complexity. How do we become integrous leaders when perhaps we are living inside of these different kinds of trade offs, either in my own embodiment and shaping? This is true in me and this is also true in me, and or in competing priorities or competing tensions that I'm actually carrying. There's not like a single answer. Here's how you solve for that. It is a huge part of what we support our clients in the context of our work at Guts and Grace. So, really happy to talk to you about this if this is something that you are feeling is important for you. What I want to do together is give you a moment to really feel into, well, how do I relate again to this particular aspect of trying to increase my integrity or really deepen in my integrity? Do I relate, for example, to some type of attention or a trade off or a two different things pulling me in different directions that both feel true or both feel like me? So, in service of that, let's take a moment. If you're writing or journaling and you've been taking notes, awesome. Put your pencil down or your pen down or your typing down for just a moment. And I invite you to, again, like we started, take a breath, take a moment for presence, feel your body. And we're going to do a small piece of an embodied practice that does come from my training at the Strozzi Institute. But we're really just going to scratch the surface of this work. So I want to just give you a chance to feel the tension. We won't resolve it today, just to give you a chance to look for, to sense it for yourself. So when you're ready, I invite you to lift one hand, almost as if you're holding something in the palm of your hand, your right or your left hand. And imagine that this one side of the trade-off or the tension exists on that side of your body or is sitting in the palm of that hand. On one hand, and let yourself name what it is. You could have your eyes closed or open, but feel, okay, if this is, I want to have a family, or I want to bring more attention to my family, or if this is, I really have a lot of fears and concerns that if I speak up, someone will judge me, I might lose my job, whatever happens to sit on this hand. I seem to have power when I'm really nice, but it's not always how I actually feel. But here's the place where I'm nice and I have power. And feel what that's like. But that when you relate to that, it's like me in relationship with this part of myself. What is the sensation there? What's the mood there? What lives in you around this part of yourself? And then lower the hand. Raise the other hand, same thing, palm up, as if you're just holding it in the palm of your hand or you're feeling this side of your body. And on this hand, I'm so excited about growing my career. On this hand, I'm a bold freaking leader. On this hand, I have a lot to say and a lot of opinions about things, also true of me, and feel what this side of the story is like. There's this me also. And then to experience the contrast, I invite you to bring both hands up side by side and let yourself in a way toggle between the two. There's this side. On this hand I'm like this and it feels like this is what it's like. On the other hand, I'm a bit like this is what it's like. And just notice, does one feel more true? Are they both compelling? Could be one of these is you in your full integrity, and one is kind of a not self, shadow, a cover, something that's not really so, or that really you could begin to grow away from and let go of. Could be not so. Could be they're both worthwhile, authentic parts of you that have something different to say or are asking different things of you. So just see if you can sense what's true for you and what you've chosen. On this hand, on this hand. Good. Okay. There's much more we could do with this, but at this moment, I invite you to bring your hands down. If you need to like brush off or shake off, maybe that was like no big deal, or depending upon who you are and what you might have been working with just now, it might have felt like a lot of energy. So feel free to do something to reset or recenter yourself. And then grab your notebook and let's take a couple of notes. We'll be just a couple more minutes here before we close. So first of all, how do you relate to perhaps these two sides of a coin? Is there a either this or this that's part of what you're grappling with as you come into even more full integrity as a person or as a leader? If you were working with two things right now, just write down what was one side or the other. And or maybe you didn't pick something and you just watched me do the exercise. You're welcome to try it on later. But do you or how do you relate to contradictions or trade-offs or two different things that might also be true when it comes to living into your own integrity? And then briefly, if you did choose two things or two became clear as we were talking about it, what is that tension or what are those side like what is having those two things in play? What is that taking care of for you? Perhaps one hand is like, oh, this side is really where I got belonging or still get belonging, or a way I kind of keep myself safe, or something that helps me preserve my dignity. And again, maybe it isn't totally me, or maybe it really feels like it is. Okay. So your homework, your next step, if you choose to accept it, is to decide on something to practice and or to reflect on, or let's say research over the next week, that gives you some more understanding of or helps you to kind of grapple with this particular aspect of integrity that might involve a trade-off. So it could be that you simply observe yourself over the next week. Here's how I am when I'm in these two different modes, to get to know, well, are they really both me? Does one seem to be a bit more in integrity for me or not? How did they actually interact with each other? Maybe they're not really as in conflict as I thought they were, but just observing who you're being, what's coming up, what's coming through you in terms of actions or thoughts or conversations or ways of being, as you're in either of those modes. It could be that your practice or the thing you want to do to take a next step, maybe you've already kind of observed it pretty well, and you want to do a little bit of giving voice to both sides. So it could be take a journal or have a conversation with a friend, a colleague, a therapist, somebody where you speak to, well, here's what's on this side of the trade-off, here's what's on that side of the trade-off. And through the speaking of the two sides, get a better sense of, yeah, both are parts of me, and actually integrity would be to kind of bring them together, or to find a way that it enables me to hold both. Or actually, no, in fact, in spending some more time with it, one is a little bit more a me and one is a little bit more of a not me, or an out of integrity part. Could be that if there's one you tend to give more airtime to, then your practice is to simply let the other one get a little more airtime. So live it out a little more. Try it on with a colleague or team or mentor, maybe as a way of experimenting balance or letting the other side have a bit more say. You could say, I'm going to take the next week and I'm mostly going to be with this side, for example. And you may find, yeah, actually, that side is totally not helpful. It's time to let that side go. Or, in fact, this side is a real aspect of me that I want to elevate or want to grow into more. Maybe it's even more in integrity than the other side. So there's no way to do this wrong, but I do invite you to practice because there's probably also no way to find your way into a new calibration or a new embodiment of this aspect of your integrity without some practice, without investing a little bit of time, dedicating a little bit of energy to it. So that is your invitation. And as I mentioned last time I came on live, helping our clients work with their perhaps misalignment or deepen in their experience of personal and professional integrity is a huge part of what we do at Guts and Grace. So if this is something you would like support with, we do have a few things available. One, there's actually a quiz that we are putting out there now, which is called the 4 Keys quiz, and it gives you a chance to play with 4 aspects of we could say integrity as a woman leader, but really 4 aspects of leadership that I tend to find we lose our way in as women in leadership. So you can take the quiz to find out which one is the highest for you and which one is the lowest for you. Where are you doing well, or where might you actually want to upgrade? We'll make sure it's in the show notes, and I just put it in the chat here. And then in addition, if you would like to go deeper on this topic in a one-on-one call with myself or one of my team members, you are welcome to apply for a free discovery call. What a discovery call is at Guts and Grace is it's basically an opportunity to be in a one-on-one mini coaching session where we define what are the key things that are in your way at your next level of leadership. What is the core kind of organizing principle for your advancement or your growth in leadership and in life that you want to identify? And often we will uncover some of these trade-offs or ways that you feel out of integrity. So this can be a great way to get some specific one-on-one support to actually unpack what's so for me in this domain. We actually are opening the door next week to our Guts and Grace half-year or year-long coaching program. So a discovery call can also be an opportunity to ask questions about that program, that process, and to explore whether having a personal and a group coaching experience around this time might be supportive for you. So I'm always happy to be in touch. Feel free to message me here on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out for a discovery call and or just keep watching us here live and keep in touch. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope that this opens some interesting lines of reflection and embodied exploration for your week.